Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Cold War heating up into an actual war. What we're focusing on today is the Korean War. Today, you should be able to tell me how China converting to communism affected the Cold War and what were some consequences of the Cold War, specifically the Korean War. Today, we are focusing on Tennessee U.S. History Standard 77, which asks you to describe the causes, course, and consequences of the Korean War. So you need to know why the 38th parallel is important. You need to know about the Incheon landing, how the communist Chinese got involved in it, the power struggle between MacArthur and Truman, and then the final how the Koreas ended up, how the Korean War ended up. All right, so to start with, you have China falling to communism. You have communists overthrowing the democratic government in China. The communists were led by this guy. His name is Mao Zedong. Yes, I know it says Zedong, but it's pronounced Zedong. And he is going to defeat the nationalist government or the democratic government led by Chiang Kai-shek. You'll also see him in textbooks as Zhang Jiechi. He's defeated. He has to flee China. He leaves China, goes to an island called Taiwan. Okay. And he sets up his own government that he calls the real Chinese government. And the U.S. is freaking out because communism didn't work. Containment didn't work. Communism spread. And we fight for a while to get the United Nations to accept Chiang Kai-shek's Taiwanese government as the real Chinese government, because China is one of the permanent members of that UN Security Council. And there's already one communist government on it. We don't want another one. The United Nations actually does not agree with this. The United Nations accepts the communist Chinese government as the real Chinese government. So by the height, this is not right now, but by the height of the Cold War, everything you see colored in on this map and something other than gray was communist or controlled by a country that was communist. Okay. All right, so the Korean War. Korea was controlled by Japan at the end of World War II. So when Japan surrenders, we're going to take that away from them. And we divide Korea along the 38th parallel. Okay. We create two separate countries, North Korea and South Korea. And North Korea turns to the Soviet Union for help, and South Korea turned to the United States for help, which means whenever they're creating their governments, North Korea is getting advice from the Soviet Union, so it's going to become communist. South Korea is getting advice from the United States, so it's going to become democratic. In 1950, communist North Korean forces are going to invade the South. The United Nations and President Truman freak out. Okay, without warning, the North Koreans just invade South Korea, and they're going to push everybody down to the southeast portion of South Korea, around the city called Busan, and that's all of South Korea that's left. North Korea controls all of the rest. United Nations and Truman, because South Korea was attacked without warning and for no reason, they ordered troops into South Korea to help push the North Koreans back up to the 38th parallel. Douglas MacArthur is put in control of all of the forces, mostly because most of the UN forces that were sent to South Korea were Americans. This is never considered a war. The United States doesn't technically declare war against Korea. This is a UN police action. And the stated goal of this police action was not to take over North Korea. The stated goal was to push the North Koreans back up to this 38th parallel. Okay. So if you look at this map, the goal here, everything in the light yellow color is controlled by North Korea. This bright orange right here near Busan, that is all that's left of South Korea. So the stated goal of this police action was to push everybody back up right here to the 38th parallel. Okay. And General MacArthur is kind of a genius in this. Instead of doing what everyone expected him to do, they expected him to land at Busan and combine his troops with the South Korean troops and push north. Excuse me. And that's not what he did. What he does instead is he lands near Incheon. Excuse me. He lands near Incheon right here, and surprises the North Koreans, separates their forces, and very quickly starts to beat the North Koreans back up. Now, we told him stop at the 38th parallel. MacArthur doesn't do that. MacArthur doesn't believe in fighting to a draw, right? He's a general. You don't fight wars with the intention of a draw. You fight to win. So he keeps pushing the North Koreans closer and closer to China. And China sends a warning to South Korea and the Americans to stop advancing, or they're going to join the war. And they flat out tell us, look, you get close to the Yalu River, which was the Chinese border, and we will stop you. And Truman tells MacArthur to stop. MacArthur doesn't stop. And the Chinese do what they said they were going to do. We got too close to the Yalu River, and over 300,000 Chinese troops crossed the border and pushed the United States back south. We are forced below the 38th parallel. 38th parallel actually goes right through here. We are forced down to where this line is. That is where most of the fighting took place in the Korean War. Okay. And the war between North and South Korea is going to escalate into a war between China and the United States. And we are fighting it in Korea. Okay. Fighting is going to continue for 2 years. Neither side could gain an advantage over the other. Now, MacArthur very loudly said that we should nuke China. We should drop an atomic weapon on China. Truman says, are you crazy? No, we're not doing that. MacArthur goes out in public and basically calls Truman an idiot because Truman won't do this. And MacArthur's had enough. Truman fires MacArthur because he's had enough. He's tired of MacArthur calling him an idiot. And Truman is MacArthur's boss, and you can get fired for calling your boss an idiot. The fighting ends with neither side winning. You got 54,000 Americans dying. $67 billion was spent. And at the end of the war, they just go straight back to this map. It looks exactly like this. They just draw the line and everything's back the way it was. So a lot of Americans feel disheartened by this because basically we spent $67 billion and lost 54,000 troops just to spend money and lose troops. We didn't do anything. They didn't accomplish anything. And this is whenever you start to see something called the domino theory. The United States was afraid that because China and North Korea fell to communism, other small nations would follow. It was this theory that the countries in Southeast Asia are going to fall like dominoes. Once you push one over, it's going to knock all the next ones down the line. So the only way to stop that would be to find a way to hold up one of these dominoes to keep it from falling. So over and over and over again, you're going to see us getting involved in wars, specifically just to keep that country from becoming communist, to try to hold that domino up so it doesn't fall and knock over all the countries behind it. Those of you who know anything about U.S. history know this doesn't really work out well for us. Okay, and that is it for today.